Welcome back to JrECTV. I'm Rhiannon Traill, your host, and I want to welcome Jay Walker, eating disorder and mental health advocate, to the show. Jay, thanks so much for being here with us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just first open up the discussion by you telling us a little bit about your story and how you've gotten here.
Sure. So I guess I speak about my experience having an eating disorder.
Yeah.
When I was in middle or high school was kind of when everything started. I put on a little bit of weight, as many people's weight does fluctuate in their teens.
Yeah.
But that was when I first became very aware of my body changing, comments about my body. And so I, for years, was always sort of chronically either, nothing extreme, but either dieting or the opposite, kind of binging. And then it was really when I got into university, I kind of got into health and fitness to kind of combat those behaviors and in the hopes of feeling better about my body. And that turned into a bit of an addiction in itself.
Okay.
And so through that, I became very exercise compulsive. And then when I wasn't exercising, I was engaging in eating disordered behaviors. And eventually, when I was in my early 20s, it became very extreme to the point where my behaviors were either very anorexic or binge purging behaviors and compulsive exercise, and just
everything
really bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I sought out help, one-on-one therapy, group therapy, and that's how I kind of got into this advocacy role.
Yes. Okay.
Because one thing I realized was how little people actually open up and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Right?
And it takes a lot of courage to do so.
Yeah, so that's a big reason why I started to talk about it, because people who are affected by eating disorders are all over the map.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not the stereotypical young, tiny teenage girl. That's generally what has been put out there. And
that's
really,
what we picture.
That's one of millions of images that are actually real.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's a big reason why.
So I want to open up the conversation, and you will be sort of our expert here, Jay, but I want to ask, what are we willing to sacrifice in order to look good? Because, and when is that okay? And then when is that an eating disorder? So when is it just a negative body image, and when does it turn into an actual disorder? And I want to ask you guys what your thoughts are. And if you guys think of friends or peers or anyone or even yourselves, have you ever felt negative about your own body? Have you ever tried to do anything that maybe isn't healthy?
Like, I think everyone, I don't know necessarily about guys, but everyone has pretty much looked in the mirror one day and said, yo, I do not like that part of my body. I want to change it.
Sometimes every day, yeah.
Yeah, every day. Like, you look and say, like, oh, I wish my butt was bigger. I wish my stomach was smaller. I wish my hips were bigger. My nose was different, whatever. And I think it happens to literally everyone. So I think it's just a broad spectrum. But I think very few people actually get to the point where they actually physically try to do something or do something that's like really, really harmful to themselves about it.
Okay, interesting.
I think going further into that, I think a lot of this is really akin to what I believe is with depression, because so many people can just say, oh, I've been sad before, I've been this, I've been that, but you need to realize that there are people who take it very, very far, and that means that there definitely is something inside them, and I believe it's very similar with this. And my biggest issue with trying to deal with this is I have friends who have had eating disorders, I have friends who claim they don't, and it's being able to differentiate and think, what could I do personally? When I think about an eating disorder, I don't necessarily think about how your body works, but I think it's about the obsession. It's about if you're counting your calories at every second of the day and still not satisfied, if you are constantly asking people, do I look good, this, that, or even worse, asking yourself, where is that point in which you've encroached into my territory?
Well, and it's interesting too, because I even think as a woman, and again, there's this perception that women are the only ones that think and feel this way, but that's not true. But for me, I know as a woman, from a very early age, I think maybe grade 7, I was already starting to try and skip meals to be a little bit thinner. So I was kind of starving myself sometimes. Was it an eating disorder? I don't know. Was it the start of something? I never actually full on had an eating disorder, but I was definitely engaging in behaviors and having really negative thoughts. And I thought that was just part of being a teenage girl, because every other one of my friends was doing the exact same thing.
Yep.
So I want to ask you, Jay, if you could tell us what is the difference, for real, between just poor body image and an actual eating disorder. Do you know how to describe that?
I think it's the two can and can't be differentiated, right? Because you can have someone who's got a negative body image, who the behaviors don't, they're not engaging in those same behaviors. Right? Still not a good thing. But
they're not happy with themselves, but they're not going to binge and purge because of it.
Sure, and so what I think, like the misconception is that unless the behaviors are really extreme, that it's an eating disorder. And to me, I would also consider someone who has been chronically dieting for 20 years, maybe that, maybe they're not in a hospital for it.
Right.
However, that seems to be very socially acceptable, but it's also really not good for your health.
No,
right? Like, and
not.
so. So I work in health and fitness now, and like the amount of clients I've worked with who have shot up and down their weight, the equivalent of hundreds of pounds over the years, like that's not good. So to me, that also qualifies as having a disordered eating problem, and it looks different in every person, and it looks different via age, via culture, like all of these things.
So it's not so easy to define in that way. Now, I know that this is a big topic, but let's talk about how the media portrays men and women, and the bodies and the images that we see every day. This obviously plays into the psyche of what we think we're supposed to look like. These airbrushed images, these models. Men now, it's rippling muscles. I mean, it's extreme. It's absolutely extreme. Those people, that's their whole life is dedicated to looking that way, and even so, they're digitally enhanced and whatever else. But to the naked eye, we don't think about that. We just see an image and compare ourselves. How are you guys right now impacted by that? And you guys have even more, because you've got Instagram and all of these things where people are, displaying their bodies and.
I think a big trend right now is definitely the derriere, like with the rise of, Kim K and such, which it's, of course, they can show their body how they want, and if they have a bigger butt, that's awesome. If you have a smaller butt, that's okay, but I think it can almost occur in an opposite way, where all the time I get comments, your butt's so small, you have a flat chest, do you diet all the time, you have an eating disorder, like all these harmful comments that people don't realize. They think it's a compliment because they think being skinny is what everyone wants, where maybe I do want a bigger butt, maybe I do want bigger boobs, and to the point where sometimes I felt like, oh, maybe I need to go get a Big Mac or something like that, but like I've had a petite frame for all of my life, and I can't help when I don't gain weight, you know what I mean?
I completely feel you, because I'm also like pretty skinny myself, and it's like, especially with derriere, it's actually gotten to the point where I was like, I don't, like, my butt doesn't look the way I want it to look in my prom dress. And I would say, like, I'm a fairly confident person, but even sitting there looking at myself in my prom dress, I'm like, I need to, like, go get my butt enhanced or go wear Spanx for my prom. I've been hitting the gym doing squats, like, hoping that my butt's gonna get bigger. But what I've been gifted with is what I've been gifted with. And I think everyone, like, has to love themselves, and it's way harder than anyone can say to do that, but it is there, and we are young, and I would say we are a group of confident people, but it still happens with us.
It's also important to remember that even though you're confident, because like you said, you're a very confident person, I consider myself to be a very outgoing and confident person, everyone has moments of weakness. We all wake up, models, Victoria's Secret angels wake up in the morning and think, wow, I really do not look good today, and that's okay. You don't have to be 100% confident all the time. It's not natural to feel like that all the time.
And we also need to sort of recognize that those who have want. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you always want what you don't have.
Yeah, like you may want to be a little bigger or have like a bigger butt or whatever, but me on the opposite end, I would always be like, oh, maybe I should eat an apple as opposed to like a cookie. And it's not necessarily about sort of watching someone's patterns and stuff, but it's also just about recognizing what's hidden behind a smile. Because there's so many things that you don't know what's going on, and that's why, especially in the media, there has been a whole bunch of images about the perfect look and what guys find attractive or what women find attractive, but there's also this thing about breaking down the stigmas about mental health that has been out there now, and I think that's great that they're actually raising awareness to the fact that all of these images that are out there need to be reconstructed, because they're all misconstrued ideologies of what we should look like, when that's exactly not what's represented by our population. Like, look at all of us. We all look so different, yet we're all beautiful and we're all unique in our own ways, and no poster can tell us that we're not.
But now I want to look at it from the other side as well, though, because something that I see is growing in the media right now is the fact that you see a lot of advertisements, especially Special K and such, which are telling you your body is okay, you're this, you're that, Dove and all of that. And I wonder, Are these positive? Is this showing a trend in another direction? Is this actually what is needed?
Yeah, I can see what you're
These
saying,
movements are
because
set.
when they say, oh, love your body campaign, even if you're still looking at those women and think, wow, that's what a normal body looks like, but I still don't have that body, it's still pushing you to think, I'm still not at what society wants me to be.
Well, I also think it's interesting. Do any of you watch the show Girls, the HBO show Girls?
I've heard of
I've
it.
heard of it, yeah.
Lena Dunham is the young girl who writes it, and she's got a different body shape than what you would, you know, classify as the typical, you know, perfect female body. She's beautiful, but she's not at the same time if you're going to compare her on, you know, the average actress that you would see getting naked. But she gets naked on this show all the time, and she's got a little pot belly, and she's got cellulite, and she's got kind of a pear shape to her, and it's really amazing to watch her, you know, just be so open with her body and look and think that's what a normal body looks like. There's nothing wrong with her body, but it's so shocking that it's almost like it's repulsive almost because we're so conditioned to be looking at these perfect
Absolutely.
bodies.
I think there's been a lot written about the show Orange is the New Black as well, for really showing like an extremely wide spectrum of women's bodies as well. And I mean, this is the thing, is say 10 years from now, we take your body, right? And only bodies like your body, and we promote it and we say, that's the female body that everyone that has to aspire to. To me, that's no more or less problematic than taking one that is rail thin or has a bigger booty or whatever. The idea is that we're really only representing, generally speaking, a very narrow idea of what beauty is supposed to be. And it's the same thing with guys. And so, like, to get to your point when we're talking about like all of these love your body campaigns about how is this a step in the wrong direction? Like, I've seen people make arguments that it's like, oh, well, if we do this, people are just going to be satisfied being morbidly obese. And it's like, well, probably not, because that's not a very easy life, you know? But shaming people who are really struggling with, we're talking about like health, like weight problems that are actually affecting their health, not someone who's like curvy, right?
Yeah.
Like shaming people, like it really doesn't help anyone get better, you know? And I think like the idea that it's taking it in the completely opposite direction and just gonna have people like satisfied in their unhealthy lifestyles or whatever, to me is garbage.
Well, I have to say it's interesting. As you guys know, I just had a baby 3 months ago, and that's something to have your body go through that transition of carrying a child and giving birth. But it's so interesting, again, in the age of social media, I must say, this is my second child, and my first pregnancy was completely different than my second, because now Instagram and everything else has all of these people that you follow, these like mommy blogs, and all of them are about posting these ripped bodies like 1 week after having a baby and showcasing. And I gotta tell you, I felt so bad about myself. I looked at myself and I was like, I don't look like that. I look awful.
And Kourtney Kardashian posted a selfie right after, well, not right after, but a few weeks after, and she has these washboard abs, and it's
and it's just really hard to view that. So
I think in the end, what we should be looking at is trying to move towards a culture in which the only person who tells you that you need to change your body is your doctor. That's it. I believe that it should be to the point where if it's a definite health risk, if you are requiring perhaps maybe there needs to be a surgical procedure done or a serious diet change, then yes. But beyond that, we need to work towards it being where it's always going to be in the media and such, but representing the different body types, I think, is huge to play into that. Open that up, and also beyond opening up the dialogue, open up the fact that it's to the point where they say an ugly person has a better sense of humor because that person isn't spending every second focusing. They joke about it to the point until they become fully comfortable with it, to the point where they don't even see themselves as ugly anymore or beautiful.
Or it's a great way to hide.
They see themselves as just them. That's it's moving beyond that. So I believe the issue with the campaign saying, "Oh, you're beautiful in this body." My big issue with them is I'm wondering, is it genuine, or are people looking at this cynically? If I was anorexic and I saw this ad saying, "Oh, you're beautiful just the way you are," would I look at this and connect with them and be like, "Oh yeah, today I'm going to stop my diet and going into it"? Or is it pushing you to the margins by saying, "Look, even they're happy with their bodies. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?"
I don't know. I think that it's not necessarily about, like, the one thing that we all could do without is that amount of social media that we focus on and that the amount of attention that we give to the public, because like the quality of like a warm touch, a comforting touch is much better than a phone call, or it's much better than a like on Facebook. And one thing that we can help each other do is to not ostracize them and not marginalize the people who are watching these things or who do feel that way. It's about actually being there with the person who does have those issues and just being like, you know what, you are perfect the way that you are, and even though you might not see that, I see that, and I will be here for you until you see the way that I see you. Do you know what I'm saying?
I have to say, I'm extremely conflicted on the issue of these like body campaigns, because on one hand, I'm really glad that there is this focus of, hey, there are other women who are of different sizes.
Shapes out
like,
there.
and I think that is really good, but at the same time, I see the problem with how this could be taken to an extreme and how this could cause other issues. So for me, personally, I'm just extremely conflicted on if these campaigns are good or if they're bad. And I honestly have no position really, because I'm super confused about everything. I think realistically, as Liv said, that we need to tone down on the social media aspect, because there's a lot of things on there that are really
having a negative influence.
Yeah, definitely.
In a lot of
That's
ways.
definitely the only thing
Well,
I'm
I
sure
think
of.
like the whole like selfie culture, right?
Yes.
Like this idea of like having to like photograph oneself, present oneself a certain way all the time, right? Like, you know, everyone presents themselves a certain way for their job or whatever, but I mean, you know, when we are effectively living a daily life where we're constantly taking photos, making sure they look good enough, you know what I mean?
Well, it's
And it's
really
all
weird.
to a degree. A lot of it, like what we put online, a lot of it is sort of set up and artificial.
Yeah, I saw
right?
a fascinating article about, it was in a magazine, I can't recall which one it was, but it was girls sharing their stories behind like the Instagram photos they post, and what
I saw this
was
too.
read.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
absolutely heartbreaking. One girl posted, oh, I was throwing up because I was so nervous for a midterm, and another one felt sick to her stomach because she was nervous about how she would appear to people on social media, and it's just heartbreaking that we feel such pressure to post about our own lives and to be honest about that, and it's really sad.
So I want to ask you, because I know that teens are really at the highest risk for developing eating disorders. Why is that? Why are teens at risk?
I mean, people of any age are at risk. However, I think teenagers may be at higher risk, likely because, I mean, kind of what we touched on, like it's this kind of social media selfie culture. Mind you, again, that's spreading the spectrum of all ages now. But, I mean,
You're trying to kind of fit in, I guess, as a teen.
well, and like
you need validation.
People are going throughout your teen years. I mean, we change all through life, but throughout your teen years, like we go through massive changes, and we're also introduced to a lot of new material and a lot of new ways of kind of viewing the world and viewing ourselves. There's also, you know, that's generally when most people start to develop a bit of, not necessarily a sex life, but sexual attraction and all those things. So whether or not it's like, there's just so many reasons why people can develop them. I think those are maybe some of the kind of like added ingredients into the pot as to why it's a bit of a higher.
Absolutely.
Something
rate.
I want to add on to that. Also, I think as you move towards forming your own diet, and that's a huge part, because my lifestyle and my diet as a kid was completely different than it is now. Now I dictate myself and I get there.
Yeah.
With my parents, it was their responsibility to go through
Here it
this.
is.
And I believe if there was a way, a transitionary stage, I support teaching kids to cook on their own, stuff like that. I believe it's more of a passive thing that will keep you within this area. And if you can avoid it from becoming active, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that, we avoid this obsession and make the transition smoother so that you're more confident in yourself.
Like yes and no. I can see that in some cases, but we also get, you know, we get 8-year-olds or younger who are developing.
Well, it's happening younger and younger, and
Yeah.
again, you look at it's, you know, the media exposure is constant. My son is 4 years old, and he's already very aware of what he sees on TV and all of these things. And that guy has muscles, or daddy, you're fat. Like but it's true.
And-
so they are impacted. We have to come back to it because this is great, and there's a lot more. So we'll be right back with more on body image and eating disorders right after this short break.